Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do yet another Skinwalker Experience video. This time once again coming from the reddit.com website. They're from a different Reddit called Paranormal, and in this case it involves one of the scariest encounters I've read yet. Imagine something that sounds like a horse walking up to your car and then trying to open the car handle, like in other words, the car door handles. Doesn't that just creep you out? This is apparently something that happened to some tourists that were there on a trip in Utah, and it's just pretty frightful stuff. And that doesn't even go into the details yet, involving two wolf bear-like dogs that apparently were just fighting to no end. Pretty scary stuff. But it comes from a user by the name of Damien687, and they titled their experience quite succinctly as My Skinwalker Experience. So let's go ahead and let's share this long story here and see if you agree with me that this is one of the scariest encounters yet. So here's what they state. Buckle up, Buttercup. This is a long ride. It was only a few years ago in the spring/summer. I live in Utah and loved exploring with my ex-wife and stepson. We did a lot of geocaching around Utah to keep the stepson entertained, and he was still pretty young, like 5 at the time. And it gave my ex and I the opportunity to see what all of Utah has to offer. We had also made sure that at least once a month, she and I would go away somewhere and camp, hike, explore. You get the idea. So during one of our trips, it happened to fall on the weekend where my ex had her son, and I had gotten off to work early on that Friday. And so we made a last-minute plan to drive down to Monument Valley and camp out there and then do some hiking in the morning. We had left that afternoon and didn't get down there until a little after midnight. There were no clouds in the sky, no major light pollution, and stars as far as your eyes could see. Side note, if you haven't spent time far, far away from cities, you'll be surprised at how much light pollution prevents you from seeing. And so we checked with the hotel that is right at the rim of the overlook for Monument Valley, but they were a little too pricey for us. So we pulled off the main road where there is this old, like really deserted parking area that made a semicircle as it jutted off the main road. Completely surrounding that semicircle of red sand and quote-unquote carports were miles of sagebrush, rocks, etc. There were no paths exiting the semicircle. Remember this part. And so we pulled in and had the headlights of the car facing the tent that had faced the road. We laid down our tarp, set up the tent, got all cozy in the sleeping bag. We had 2 that zipped up into one massive sleeping bag and then went to sleep. And so right around 3 a.m., I get nudged awake by my ex asking, "Did you hear that?" To which I said no, and then that's when I heard 2 things outside the tent. I completely froze up because then I saw my ex-wife's face and it put chills down my spine. She had apparently been awake for about 10 minutes before me because she had heard these things fighting. And when I finally realized what was going on, that's when I heard them fighting too. It sounded like 2 dogs the size of bears slugging it out. Like they made noises that I'll never forget. Like the deepest guttural, dog-like human growl or gnashing of teeth. The 2 things I presume heard me because they heard me loosen my buck knife that I always kept under the pillow because they immediately stopped fighting and then started running around the tent. I could hear their deep breaths and powerful feet hitting the ground. And then they immediately sprinted off towards the road. Remember where the car was facing, sagebrush to the east of the sand semicircle, main road to the west, and then they started attacking each other again. And that's when I hear a horse snorting roughly 3 feet from my head. Now, I hadn't heard a horse walk up or make any noise. It was suddenly just there. You know that feeling you get when you just know something or someone is looking at you even though you can't see them? It was that, plus this overwhelming sense of dread and sheer terror. Well, even though it was spring/summer, we left the rainfly on just in case of random spring storms, so I couldn't see through it. nor did I want to even move because I was afraid it would try to get inside the tent. And so I slowly unsheathed my knife and turned on my back, and that's when I heard this horse trying to open my car doors. I could hear it snorting like a horse does randomly as it flicked my door handles. I could hear it start at the passenger side and then work its way around, flicking each door handle until it had gone around the vehicle not just once, but twice. And then once it gave up on the doors, it came back to the tent. And here's where I accepted that we were gonna die. I've had some paranormal stuff happen to me that spooked me. I've seen scary movies, etc., but I've never been so scared that I literally felt all the will to stay alive just leave. I had accepted that this evil was here to kill me, my ex-wife, and my stepson. Words seriously cannot explain how much dread was in the air. It was so heavy and drowning. After what felt like an eternity, this horse got up, walked away from my tent towards the east, and this was towards the sagebrush, and then the dog things also left. And then that was it. Nothing. And so at first light, as I did not sleep for the several hours after the encounter, my ex and I immediately opened the tent and started looking around at what was outside. I saw hoof prints around the car, and then they led into the sagebrush and literally disappeared, like there were zero tracks of any horse once the footprints entered that sagebrush. We found the dog thing tracks, and then she and I both saw that they were indeed not dog tracks. The dog prints they left in the sand were about the size of my shoe, which is a size 11.5 American. These were unnaturally large. I've seen bear prints this size, but on a dog, hell no. And so we packed it up and got the F out of there. As soon as we had everything torn down, we snapped a couple of photos and then immediately left. Paranormal blank like that makes me real nervous because that feeling of evil will never go away. Plus, after talking to my Navajo buddy, he told me I encountered a skinwalker. So F that noise. And then that's it. That's everything that this user Damien687 mentioned about their very frightful encounter. So let's go ahead and let's post those comments on here as far as my own thoughts. So once again, I consider this one of the most frightful encounters yet. Like, I was getting the severe heebie-jeebies when I originally first read it, and I was still getting it again when I was reading it here for you. So in this case, it turns out it's Utah when it comes to this experience, and we finally get an exact spot. Monument Valley. Anyone been there before? Anyone knows where it is? Well, apparently, if you go there, and then there's like a parking area by this hotel, I guess, that's nearby. If you go there and you see a semicircle right off the main road, and then this semicircle is surrounded by these carports, that's exactly where this encounter happened. How about that? You could actually try to go stay there for the night in that exact spot, and then you'll be able to maybe see something like this happen. But well, of course, why would anybody want to do that? So again, you have to go to that Monument Valley, you have to find that hotel, and then when you're there, go to the area that seems like a semicircle of sorts, like a parking area, and then that's where this thing apparently appears. Let's talk about those things too. First, you have those two gigantic wolf bear-like dogs. Good Lord, imagine hearing something like that out there in the open. You can't see it. I think that's what also was making this experience far more frightful, is that it was pretty much all up in the air when it came to the imagination. This guy couldn't see what was going on. We couldn't see it from his vantage point. So everything that was happening was just stuff that was in the mind. But I think that makes it far more frightful, because here you could imagine that there was these gigantic wolf-like dogs just gnarling at each other, just pure evil, the kind of dogs that you would imagine are almost like hellhounds. And then there they are running around his tent at the same time. But of course, that all culminated into that horse, whatever that horse was, that intelligent horse that apparently had been there by his tent the whole time, peeking in, seeing him without seeing him, and then it was there making his presence known. what a crazy way. Horses are considered obviously such beautiful animals, but hearing this, the way that this guy described it, this is definitely, it's not a horse that you would want to come across. That sense of dread, which I've mentioned before in some of my other videos on skinwalkers that people relate. It's this evil sense of dread, the idea that you do not want to be there. It doesn't want you to be there, but it's enjoying the type of terror that it's creating. That's the kind of stuff that was happening here. And then the intelligence of that horse, the idea that it was trying those door handles, all four door handles of the vehicle itself, not just once, but twice. And then when that happened, it was right back at the tent, almost seeping in all that evil or dread or fear that this person was having, this user. What a terrible night. Imagine like that, something like that happening, and you had, in this case, his ex-wife and a stepson there, and all he had was a teeny tiny little knife. Obviously not anything that could be done with regards to this situation, but luckily for them, these things just apparently just walked off into the distance, mysteriously too, because they didn't leave any footprints or paw prints, if you will, and then that was it. That was everything. I'm with that guy too. As much as this was happening outside, and as much as that itch was to try to see what those things were and what they were doing, how they look like, and so on, I would not see it at the same time. I kind of had that experience just the other just the other quarter there in San Angelo, Texas, when I was there at the Fort Concho location. I knew that on the second floor of the officers' quarter 1, there was something up there. It was a little girl, like a little girl ghost. I knew she was up there, and I knew if I walked up those stairs, I would have seen her, and no matter what, I think I would have had like my heart jump out seeing a ghost in real life right then and there, because she does make her presence known, not just her presence known, but physically as well. Like you can actually see her and she sees you. And so I knew she was up there, but I didn't want to see it because that would have been a little too frightful on my end. So I know what this guy was going through exactly when it came to all this stuff happening outside, but him obviously being so scared that he didn't want to have anything to do with it. So very fascinating stuff. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Anyone there in the Utah area? Anyone there that's gone to Monument Valley? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are there, especially if you went to that overlook area in the Monument Valley with that hotel and maybe even that semicircle. Maybe you can see it in the future, and let me know what your thoughts are too. Come back to this video and post those comments below. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.